It's about history. It's about preservation. It's about sense of place here on Eastern Long Island. With Esperanza Leon, I'm Irwin Levy, and this is Our Hamptons. Esperanza.
Irwin, hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we have been recording in the mornings,
we
which
have
is
been. Yes, it's
a consistency to our
to the method to our
to,
madness.
yes,
I
yes.
guess you could say that. Esperanza. Before we introduce our very special guests, we're very honest with our audience on Our Hamptons, of course, and we have to have a little bit of disclosure before we bring them on. Look, these people are fans of Our Hamptons podcast. They really enjoy the show, and I know there's going to be some cynics out there that are going to say, yeah, that's why they're on the show. They're fans, that's how why Irwin and Esperanza invited them. And
well, because we're so self-serving.
Exactly. And of course, these cynics would actually be correct because I am that shallow and I have no integrity. And my fragile male ego does need that kind of stroking. So these people would be like, I'm just kidding.
All for you, Irwin.
I'm just kidding, of course, Our Hamptons podcast audience. But okay, without further ado, because we are going to actually get into some, serious subjects with our special guest. But why don't we just bring out, and anyone that follows us on Instagram might recognize their Instagram handle. These are the proprietors of Cedar Cottage Springs. And without further ado, let's bring out Glenn and Stacey Testa. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Oh, we're really excited to have you. And again, this is about Glenn and Stacey, are innkeepers, and I'm going to use that term because that's really what they are. And we're going to get into a lot of subjects. They do operate a property that they rent, which is a very timely subject on Eastern Long Island, Esperanza, no question about that.
And around the world, I think.
And around the world, yes. I mean, that's also true. But being as the name of our podcast isn't around the world, it's real, not our around the world, but Our Hamptons. We're going to focus on what we have going on here. But before we do, again, if you follow their Instagram, which we do, I mean, I will go on record as saying this is the most creative Instagram posts I've seen on anyone.
Agreed.
These people. So I'm going to guess Glenn and Stacey may be professionals of some kind in this field or have levels of expertise that are way above my
way above our own. Yes,
way
absolutely.
above our pay grade. So Glenn, Stacey, why don't you give us a little bit of a background on who you guys are before we get into it?
All right. Well, I'm an audio engineer by trade, although pursue many other fun things to do in life, like photography and other things, and have been doing that for the past 40 years, predominantly for film, TV, advertising, not so much music, although that's where I started from. I am also a musician, and moved here to the New York area back in 1993, so 30 years ago, 30 plus, and ended up coming out here to the Hamptons, first invited by my cousins to join them in a summer house, and then through a bandmate of a band I was in immediately after that, and I've just fell in love with it and appreciated everything about it out here, the nature and everything else, and kept coming out. And
nice.
So here I am.
Nice. Stacey?
I'm a home furnishing product designer for 25 years now, and I've left that career and now started it on my own because I'm kind of done with big corporations and want to do it on a smaller level and take Glenn's skills and my skills and incorporate it all into one. And hence the house is kind of our impetus because it's an old cottage and it's in the most beautiful place in the world. Although when Glenn first started coming out and we started dating some how many years now?
27 years ago.
27 years ago, I came kicking and screaming because I only knew the Hamptons for one thing, and it wasn't pretty. And I don't want to be a part of that until before you know it, we're doing bonfires and barbecues, and we weren't associated with any of that part of it. And it was
Yeah.
all about intimacy and community and friends and none of the club scene. And
Wow.
And that is why we say our
Yeah,
Hamptons.
that's right.
Correct.
That,
Yeah.
But by the way, Esperanza, Stacey's handing me segues like, I mean, holy
Right,
cow.
right.
Where
Well, all I was thinking is, Glenn's setup must far surpass our own as far as sound is concerned.
yeah. Well, before you got on,
Again.
Esperanza, we were actually talking about that, how, we've, how you and I have invested significant dollars in our Hamptons podcast studios as we're closing out season 5 here, believe it or not. But you really did hand a couple of really good things to us here, both of you. When you fell in love with this area, as you mentioned, so neither of you are. See, neither of you are, Glenn, you're not a native New Yorker even, am I
That is
correct? You
correct.
came,
Yep.
right? Okay, so,
Yep.
okay. So
Both
needless to say,
international.
they're not Bonnock, Esperanza.
We are not. That's correct. Yeah, we are imports.
Okay, they are imports, but getting into, you falling in love and getting into the home you both purchased out here. And how long ago how long have you had Cedar Cottage, Glenn and Stacey?
I bought it in the summer of 2000
Okay. So
from a
you've been-
friend.
Okay. So you've been here 24 years. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
In the
And-
house.
And before we get into, and to our Hamptons podcast audience, we are going to get into the whole Airbnb situation, the controversy, and all with that shortly. But before we do, so you bought this house in 2000. Now, was it always your intent to do this? Were you living in the house? Was it a summer house, weekender? What was the storyline of the house, the timeline, if you will?
I actually wasn't actively looking for a house when I encountered it. It was really a friend of mine had brought up that the person selling it, who I knew, was selling it. I didn't know. And she said, "Are you interested in buying his house?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'll check in with him and maybe take a peek at it." It was just kind of whim-like.
because you were down the road staying at
Yes,
Terry.
we were staying in a house that the lovely Terry Ganley, who has since passed, was renting to us. If you know the Maidstone Beach area, there's even like a little memorial for her.
Yes.
It's lovely. And so we were right in the neighborhood, and I went by to take a peek at the house and meet up with the owner. I don't know if I should say his name at all, but he's a known
Okay.
sort of artist person out here, Dennis Lawrence.
Okay.
So I met up with Dennis and saw the house, and it was not in as good a shape as it is now, but it was lovely.
Right.
And really lovely. I mean, I was like, oh, wow.
Right.
Something caught you,
Like instantly.
captured you, captivated. Yeah.
And I just basically said, okay, let's do this. And so he gave me a price, and I thought I was supposed to bargain. So I threw another price at him, and he said, well, I don't know, how about we go halfway in between? And I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
And that was it. I think we had to have a lawyer just to look at the paperwork that we signed, but that was it. No real estate person, nothing. It was just the two of us. And there it was.
Wow. That's that's a sweet story. Like,
It was really lovely,
It
actually.
was meant to be.
yeah. It's like one of those, or Esperanza, how it used to be.
Right.
Well,
right?
yeah, to a very great degree. Yeah.
But it's funny that, when my wife and I bought our house 35 years ago here, I'm not going to say it was a similar story, but we were invited to a friend's house we're not even that close with anymore, but we went to their house for the day, and we're driving home, and, we were young and stupid, and we're saying, wow, we really had fun. Maybe we should look for a house out here. And the next thing you know, we had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, a house up island that we lived in that needed work. And we ended up doing it anyway. And it was, of course, the best stupid thing we ever did.
Yeah.
But that's another conversation. So you lived here initially full time, or it was a weekend house for you?
I was doing summer weekends.
I see.
You know, doing the grouper thing. I was in a, you know,
Oh,
a
before
summer
the house.
before the house.
Right.
You know, with eventually with my friends, the guy who I was in a band with, and a bunch of other people. One of whom is how I eventually ended up meeting Stacey, was a member of that house, and she invited me to a party she was having, and I met Stacey. So
Oh my gosh.
all see community.
Wow.
It's the story of the group houses, really,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's a whole thing on its own.
On its own.
And
That has made lives, destroyed lives, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, Esperanza, we did an episode on Asparagus Beach with all of the group
Right.
homes, if you recall. And yeah, but
That's awesome.
you know, I guess that was a fun episode. And I guess Stacey and Glenn do prove that there can be happy endings, you know, not you know, not, as I remember a line you used during that episode, Esperanza, the flavor of the day, you know, and apparently this wasn't the case here. So you guys used it as whatever, a weekend house, a summer house,
mostly a weekend
however.
house at first. Yes.
Well,
Gotcha.
it's an
Now,
old house, so in the winter we couldn't afford to heat it.
right.
So we kind of closed up, shut the pipes down, and drained the pipes. And
A true beach house.
Right.
Yeah, and it's still the same.
And now we're figuring ways around that to make it work.
How old is the house?
So we had a friend who was a research librarian, and he delved right into it when we bought it. And he figured out that its original structure was from around 1900. So it's about 120 plus years old.
Oh my gosh.
But it got added to, I think, in the 50s, which would be
Right.
the living room kitchen area that you can kind of see behind us.
Mhm.
And it's all, you know, it's still on its original locust wood posts. There's really
Nice.
Amazing.
not that much of a
Wow.
foundation, crawl space, etc.
Right.
You know, so it's an old, fragile cottage. It's an original
Well, and-
cottage way back.
And I will say, you know, Esperanza, obviously we're looking at Glenn and Stacey on Zoom. I'm looking at it is sweet as can be. I mean, really,
Our little
come on.
place.
we can't. Now, so we have to start getting into the subject. Okay, we got the background now. When did you start? We're using the term innkeeper because this is what I really, this is, I'm not going to go back and date myself and talk about the Bob Newhart show when he bought that thing in Vermont and became an innkeeper. But when did you start that? And did it just happen organically and then it morphed into more of a business, if you will? How did it all happen?
Well, about 5 years ago, we decided that because of its historic nature and its charm, because it used to be, according to our
Research
librarian friend, said it was the second oldest house in the non-historic Springs. So the you know the house, the Pigpen house.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's the
that's-
first oldest, and then ours apparently was the second.
Wow.
right.
And
Well,
we stuck with that and used it as a storyline. And it used to be a home of a rum runner, which is fantastic for us because we are big fans of
the cocktail.
Of the cocktail. So we thought it was a good storyline and a good personality, and for us to be able to rent it. And we wanted to rent it 5 years ago for multiple reasons, because of our careers shifting and where we could work remotely. And my father took ill, and so I was in Rhode Island a lot for that period. So it was a good opportunity for us. And then we enjoyed hosting. So we kept going.
Yeah, we just kept doing it.
Wow. You know, like, because I always feel, you know, if you ever watch an Airbnb ad, like, you know, the way they try to make it warm and homey, right? Esperanza, like how there's something so nice about hosting your home and being welcoming. And again, I've never stayed in Stacey and Glenn's house. I've never been to Stacey and Glenn's house, but just the whole vibe that they put out there is sort of what I get. I mean, this is yes, you're a for-profit venture. That's not a crime in this country, the last I checked. But there's something more to it that you're bringing to the table. It's really, and I guess this is where we segue into how we talk about community. You know, you're not Esperanza. Now would be an opportune time for me to bring out the William Pickens line, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Always.
Okay. The William Pickens line, which is a line you've probably heard on our Hamptons podcast. It's the late William Pickens of Sag Harbor Hills. You know, are we a community or a commodity? To quote, you know, when we all are friends and support the work of Jane Maring of Building Kind.
Yes.
You know,
Love
do
Jane.
we extract from or contribute to a community? Now, yes, you're operating a business, no question about it, which is again fine, but you guys seem to be so entrenched within this community. You're not extracting from it. You're part of it. So how do you juxtapose those two things?
Well, for us, it was extremely important that we're promoting a personality to the home, to our guests, and that the guests can see that it's about community and it's about the humbler side of Hampton. And it's not part of the club scene or this or that. And I think with that said, I don't think we get fraternity sorority interests in our home because it's an old house. It doesn't have a flat screen movies TV. It doesn't have cable. It doesn't have a dishwasher.
No pool.
There's no pool.
Right. No pool,
It
no
is what
sauna,
it-
no tennis court.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. No basement entertainment system, bowling alley.
Is there an
It's a
outdoor
simple-
kitchen
it's
and
a
a wine
simple
cellar?
stay.
Yes, yeah. So we wanted to promote slow living.
Yeah.
And how we promote it on Instagram is by showing everything community driven that we respect and appreciate. And we don't promote clubs or this or that. We promote nature and the local artisans and our neighbors. Because for us that's important,
And the
that
history of the Springs. Too.
yeah, in the history. So we talk a lot about that on our Instagram reels. Because we want people to come here that are interested in that as well. And we also, on our listing, only 4 people are allowed in the house, because we have a cesspool for one. And we do not do instant booking. We are able then to review the guests and see how other hosts have reviewed them. Because if communication is not happening with the guest, we won't let them stay.
Right. So you really
Communication's
vet them.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for their interest and our interest, we don't want someone coming here and thinking it's this and that and it's not, and then they're upset.
Right.
But also we respect our neighbors and we don't want a party scene. And
Correct.
so we monitor that.
Yeah.
You know, in Esperanza, you know, it should also be said that, and we've discussed this on very early episodes of our Hamptons podcast, how the people in East Hampton Village would often decamp to their summer camps on 3 Mile Harbor. So, you know,
Yeah, there
renting.
were boarding houses, people. Yeah, this is I was going to say this is historically, it's nothing new in this area since the train started coming out, and even probably a little before. Yeah.
Exactly. And Esperanza also, those houses, those summer camps, what have you, Stacey and Glenn sort of almost harken back because, you know, Esperanza, their house doesn't seem to be laden with amenities.
Not even a dishwasher.
Dishwasher.
I love that.
I mean, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that you know, that alone has an appeal to me, huge. Like just the whole, this is really like, we're really the essence of what you guys are going for, you know, is something I really like. But
I mean, I was going to mention too, in light of all of this, that I mean, even back when I started, which is not that long ago, 30 years ago, I started coming out here with the summer shares, the grouper homes,
right?
as they're called. Almost all of those were full season. This was before Airbnb existed. You did it through Realtor. You would start looking for a place back in the fall, and then when you got your place, it, by its more long-term nature, it tended to be not a rule, because there was some really bad behavior back then as well.
Yes.
But they tended, because you now are surrounded by neighbors. You're there long term, like 4 months, 3.5 months. There was a lot of built-in respect. Like, you couldn't just be loud and nasty. You had to respect your neighbors.
Yeah. You came to be a part of the community for a
That is
short
correct.
period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was originally renting down in the dunes in Amagansett, and really just loved that little area and loved the people that we were surrounded with at that time 30 years ago. So I think what happened was, when Airbnb started to rise up, by its very nature, it started to push things more towards short term. I mean, even ridiculously down to like weekends, which we can't even imagine. And I think that that's one of the things that have arisen with this new era that we're in, the Airbnb era, of shorter term stays, which again, by its very nature, leads to less community attachment. You're here for 2 weeks. You're here for at most a month. I mean, we almost never get anything over a month through Airbnb. And I think that that brings with it some negative behaviors. I'll just like,
You know, I mentioned
Or-
this to Glenn and Stacey. I'm sorry, Esperanza, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, or is it just the type of people that exist today? I mean, not that they didn't exist in the past, but I'm just thinking there's been a shift, I feel like.
there has been a shift. I agree with
and
you.
and even to the point of what you were saying earlier, Stacey, of like the people's perception of this area, which has been, globally now it's known. When I was in school in Canada and people asked me where I was from, I would say from the States. Oh, where from? From New York. Oh, where from? Like I would have to break it down to Long Island and then finally East Hampton, because nobody knew who, where. But now if I say East Hampton, oh, the Hamptons immediately. It's a world renowned locale.
I will tell you, Esperanza, to that point, in one of my other hats where I'm a docent at a place we love, Longhouse Reserve, I had a guest from Australia who, of course, heard of that. We were talking about it. Oh, we all know about the Hamptons in Australia. I mean, the other part of the world.
Everywhere.
So, right.
Everywhere.
She may not have known about Topeka, Kansas, but she certainly knew about, about
this place has been put on the map, but for the wrong reasons, as we know. It's been more about the luxury, the parties, which, I mean, frankly, as you have heard on our podcast, the nightlife here to me does not exist. I don't know where people actually go dancing or go, because and I've tried, honestly, I have tried.
She's seen the sunrise,
we wouldn't have a clue. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Right. And
we actually had a guest ask us, oh, we're wondering, can you tell some clubs? And I had to answer him like, I've given you so many other recommendations, but clubs I don't know.
Yeah. That's like Irwin's pet peeve of, where to go eat. What are the restaurants?
Right. That's what people, they've never been to the Walking Dunes, heard of the Walking Dunes, but they, they want to know the Nick and Tony schedule. And we love Nick and Tony's.
Right.
It's not about
No
that,
problems there.
But it's interesting what you were saying, all of this kind of behavior, and how things have changed. I've been surrounded by Airbnbs in the past. I have a neighbor that operates one right now. And to your point, that person will rent for a night, for 2 nights. I will drive down my street and I'll see 7 cars parked there. It's a 1,400 square foot house that advertises 10 people can sleep in it. So, it's now, you mentioned septic. That septic wasn't built for 10 people.
No.
Town of East Hampton Code Enforcement, are you listening to this?
Yes. and again, Esperanza, something you brought up, Howard, this is a global problem. Like you look at a place, Palm Springs, California, for example, which has an enormous Airbnb presence as well. I was reading ads there. they have the strictest noise ordinances. You know, they want silence between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. or whatever. Don't, to the point of they don't even want you outside the house. Now, I'm not saying they have police presence. I don't know, but they're very, very strict and clear, you
Right.
know, about this sort of thing.
And people
because,
think this is the land of no.
and people think,
Right.
right. Well, I can tell you from what has gone on at my neighbor now next door, and I had one around the corner who did, Stacey, rent to a fraternity and a sorority,
Oh, we
with a
know this.
pool that I heard, man, it was, you know, and you would hear noise. And again, the talking about the behavior, you'd have to go over there. And most of the time they're young kids. They apologize. They don't even know, you know,
Right.
that they're in a residential zone. You know, they're not, but
Well, I think the greater point to make about this is that for Glenn and Stacey, this is your home.
That's
Mhm.
Right.
correct. Yes,
Um,
that is correct.
these other
Not a
places
hotel.
are not that for the most part. Nobody that I can think of in their right mind would want to rent to fraternity people
Right.
their own home,
correct.
unless
That
you're
said, I'm sure
really,
there's
really
some very
desperate.
nice people in the university Greek community, but we don't
But
want
no,
them coming down on us.
I would say that, you know, for my own family home my home here in Wainscott, it's, you don't want
No.
Yeah.
it destroyed.
I-
You don't,
I-
you want it taken care of, you want it respected, and you want your neighbors respected.
I can say that, you know, my wife and I have never rented our house in 35 years, you know, and I'm not saying that's not something to stand on any kind of soapbox. It was just our choice not to.
Right.
We had many of an opportunity to do so, but we didn't. But Esperanza, I think you really make a great point, because I think that's really the gist of it. And I really do want to go into their views of the future and what's happening within the industry. But you really put it succinctly and perfectly. This is Glenn and Stacey's home. And they're only, from the way I'm viewing this, they're only interested in people that are going to treat it like Glenn and Stacey's home.
100%.
You know, with
Yeah.
vetting and, you know, and you're not, I get a vibe, Esperanza, these two aren't letting just anybody rent,
No.
Absolutely not.
you know,
Yeah.
probably knocks my chances of ever renting it.
I was just going to say.
And we've been fortunate. We've had really wonderful guests.
Yeah.
A lot of mature adult couples or family with young kids. It's hardly been a bunch of friends coming and hanging out, and
Yeah.
which is fine as long as, you know.
As they're respectful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, I think because of the nature of the house and how old it is, it makes for a limited audience, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
fantastic for us.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
No, I really like your model. Like, I mean, I think there are people that are sensitive would appreciate, you know, what you're doing also. They're, you know, they're not interested. You know, Esperanza, look, this is such a subject we've spoken on our Hampton so many times about community. There's a person that feels that kind of connection, and there's a person that just wants to come here, and even as a short-term renter, to extract.
Extract. I mean,
Right.
that's my favorite word these days, you
Yeah.
know. And
You know,
Yeah.
to extract. You know, Glenn. You know, when Glenn and Stacey and I had a brief conversation, you know, last week, Esperanza, just, you know, prior to them coming on today. But you know, Glenn, you were talking about sort of what's happening present day in this industry with you know, more of a, you guys are innkeepers. There's more of a corporate presence, if you will,
That's correct.
involved in this industry. And look, we all see it. You know, again, I looked at this thing in Palm Springs where a parent company that owns whatever 20 or 30 houses is doing this. And this is happening even in people, you know, these organizations, companies are buying houses as rental properties, not necessarily Airbnb. So
Correct. Yeah.
tell us, you know, your observations, Glenn and Stacey, about that aspect of what's happening.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that a lot of that activity is what gives people like us a bad name. And in addition to that, it also gives an expectation from potential customers that is how all Airbnbs are. And when they encounter us and find that we're not amenable to this sort of, I like to call it the hotel style of Airbnb, where these companies buy up multiple properties and they just do whatever they need to do to make them look okay. And then they do instant bookings. So it's just like a hotel. You go online, you book your hotel room. Nobody's going to question. Nobody like, oh,
There's no
what are you
intimate
into?
connection.
No intimate connection. And they just fill them with whatever bodies want to be in there. And the result of that is you get, the party houses next door. Our friend who lives down by the marina in 3 Mile Harbor has a house right next to him that's exactly like that. And it gets filled sometimes just for a weekend, again, illegally, with these crazed groups of people. And that makes me sound like the old fuddy-duddy or something, but
That's okay. You're allowed.
oh wait, I am an old fuddy-duddy.
You and me both.
It's a club here.
Yeah.
And then everybody looks at us and says, oh, you're an Airbnb, so you're that.
Right.
And not. We just are not.
We actually follow the town of East Hampton laws.
Yeah. Why not? It's relatively easy to do.
And it's out of respect for the community.
That's correct. Yeah, we know why they did that, because there was just such rampant renting out here for short-term stays, and it really created kind of an icky vibe.
Yeah.
And we don't want any part of that. And so I think that's my view of these corporate entities that buy up all of these houses and quickly convert them into Airbnb rentals and
price gouge.
Yeah, it raises everybody's rates. It raises the real estate rates because they're buying up all of the available properties. And then we get people contacting us thinking, they're like surprised when we, don't let them do an instant book and want to show up with all their buddies and stuff. Right. So that's, I don't know, it upsets me.
It's like anything. There are so many sides to one story, if you will. And this is one of them, because yes, you are totally right. I think the main general impression is what you described just now, this insta booking, multiple houses, share houses. And it's terrible that we have it's nothing new again. Right. But it seems to be, and as I alluded to earlier, it's like a worldwide problem, which has just escalated to a point just this year that's all I saw in the news more recently about protests happening even. And it really is in great part due to this
Is this
phenomenon.
Barcelona,
Greece, Italy, Portugal, you name it, Spain, Seville, where my family's from. What a shame that we can't.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, what a shame that we can't just be tourists in another place and be respectful and have some grace. Another favorite word of mine lately.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that people can't see East Hampton and Springs for what it truly is. And that's why we try and show that it's an artist community, an ex-fishing community. It has so much to offer.
Yeah.
Well, and I wouldn't even say so much it's an ex-fishing community.
Well, it used to be plethora,
but much greater. And I wonder if I can, just to kind of reach into another realm of what you're describing with Airbnbs. I see the parallel in the construction of new homes. I mean, basically the raising of the old homes and then the construction of these mini mansions or mega mansions. Which is changing the character. And there again is the lack of respect for the community.
Right.
Yeah. And it always, we are going to start wrapping up shortly, but Esperanza uses a word we use on our Hamptons podcast a lot, respect. And a lot of it comes down to that, the poor behavior of an Airbnb tenant, quote unquote, comes down to respect, care, this is our weekend in the Hamptons and we're going to do what we're going to do. I mean, not all of them. Again, I'm surrounded by these properties and sometimes there are lovely people next door. You don't hear a peep, or it's just a family enjoying which is fine. But again, I've had 10 people, sitting around a pool next door, drinking and screaming, I mean, we've had it all. I mean, and this happens in Springs. This happens south of the highway. This is not exclusive. socioeconomic behavior.
Happens
It's
in the
all
middle
over.
of New York City.
Right.
They
Exactly.
banned Airbnb entirely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly right. So, moving towards wrapping up, how do you see the future of this all, Glenn and Stacey? I mean, do you just see you have this niche and you're going to keep moving forward with this niche and, whatever happens around you in terms of, the corporate interests in Airbnbs, you're just going to, who you are and.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because it's our home and because we don't have anywhere else to live other than New York City rent stabilized apartment,
Teeny.
we can't be here all the time. So, and we like to maintain the property after a guest checks out to ensure its turnaround is excellent for the next person and that the house is maintained.
Yeah, we do it all.
And
Yeah.
it's difficult for us. So to do 2 weeks at a time and switch is a bit heavy on us. So I think we're going to try to shift that to get more longer stays and,
Yeah.
and hope that
And a shorter season and a longer stay
Yeah.
within that time range.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like a July and August only thing or something.
like it used to be and hope that
Right.
Right.
that trend will happen again.
Well, I think
We do
that's
hope it goes back to more of
Exactly.
what I saw when I first started coming out here 30
Right.
years ago.
Yeah.
you started saying that, and I was just going to say that's how my family ended up out here,
Yeah.
was through renting for a summer and loving this place so much that we got, bought a house almost sight unseen and
Yeah.
got enrolled in the public school.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's the community we want, right?
Exactly.
People that came
Absolutely.
here because they really loved this place.
Right.
And of course, look, it was so different. I mean, there was no Zillow. There was no air.
Right.
You would go out with a broker who came out with index cards or printed out sheets. I mean, it was a whole,
Yeah.
we know it was a different world. And,
Yeah.
Esperanza, as often as we say, we can't romanticize the past. Yes, Paul Goldberger, this isn't a museum frozen in time. We continue to romanticize the past, but
Yeah.
well,
But there were good things about that past. So I think
They're worth preserving.
Yes.
I remember them well. It's not
Right.
just like, oh, it used to be.
Right,
Uh,
right. And
lived
so
it.
hopefully to your point, Glenn, that things do go back to that longer term,
Yeah.
slower living, right? I
Yeah.
don't think, I think the horse has left the barn to
to a large,
to a
I
large
know,
extent,
yeah.
right? But I do think that I think we all need to continue that, staying in that lane.
I will say, I think there is like a pushback against that bigger is better and faster is better and all that sort of stuff. I mean, even as far back as like high school, I was reading E.F. Schumacher's book, Small is Beautiful, and loved everything about it. So I don't think I'm the only one who looks at life that way. And I think a lot of people are a little bit fed up with the big giant corporate everything and
with building kinds push as well.
Yeah.
I think there's a backlash. I really do feel like a change is coming.
So you're
Who knows
saying
where
that we
they
can
look at. I'm
that
sorry.
we can go out with our big signs and say, "Tourist, go home."
Oh my God. Right?
If you see me one day on 27,
I'll
it's
be right there behind you.
Yeah.
Even though I started here as a tourist,
yeah.
What are you gonna do?
we all, I mean, pretty much we all did.
Right.
If you're not Montauk or Shinnecock,
yeah.
we're all
Correct.
tourists here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And even they.
Yeah, you have to excuse us, Glenn and Stacey. I can't speak for Esperanza, but I'm certainly getting older and crankier. But anyway, and I think on that note, this is probably as good a place to wrap up as any. But to our audience, check out Cedar Cottage Springs on Instagram. Their posts are just
they're a lot of fun.
They're a lot of fun, and these are two really creative people and really good souls. And I like what both of you are doing a lot. Not only with the home itself, but your participation in community.
Right,
I think,
keep sharing that love for the community.
Sharing the love, with the of the community. And Esperanza, I'm going to go on record as saying, I mean, I really believe this. I think Glenn and Stacey are doing what they're doing for all the right reasons.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed.
Glenn Navia, Stacey Tester, thank you so much for being
Thank
our
Thank you
guest.
for
you.
having us.
Thank
Great
you.
fun.
on our
Really
Hampton
lovely.
podcast. And Esperanza, as always, a pleasure.
Namaste.
Thanks so much for joining us. New episodes of Our Hamptons are released every other Tuesday. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.